One of the most common things that we've heard in about Trump, about everything that's happening in America, is nobody could have seen this coming, or nobody thought it would be this bad. But in fact, a lot of people did. A lot of people from when he first ran, and perhaps even considerably before then, thought it was this dangerous, thought it was a threat to liberal democracy, thought he was a fascist. Other people, in contrast, not only ignored those warnings, but were actively angry about them. And this is something that's really interested me, both as someone who has a stake in that fight, but also to just try and understand what's going on there. Why did some people get it, and others didn't? I recently had a piece in the New Republic having a stab at that. I interviewed dozens and dozens of ordinary Americans who did see it coming, Cassandras, as I called them, to try and learn what made them tick.
Hey, hi. This is Irina. I'm Toby's wife, and also, I guess, what you would consider a Cassandra. I'm quoted in the article, and we thought it would be really fun if we asked Toby a few questions about, what made him want to write this piece, what the process, and what were some conclusions he reached. Yeah. So, how does that sound? Good?
Yeah, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna just launch into it, okay?
Yep, you read the thing, you read the comments, you've got some questions for me?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. First question. What made you want to write this piece?
I've been wanting to write this piece for a long time. As you well know,
Mm.
this is something we've talked about for the entire Trump era, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I've had this debate, this kind of like an academic version of this debate, which is sort of questions about could we technically use the word fascism? Is this something that can sort of be tolerated within a liberal democratic regime? What does this say about the constitution? Blah, blah, blah. But I think all of those debates are at root, they're sort of a is it really that dangerous debate? There's been debates in the media, but I think one that's really important and kind of undercovered, or not really covered at all, honestly, is these debates that were just taking place among, Democratic primary voters, concerned citizens, just, people who don't have columns in legacy media, right? Because I don't know about you, but a lot of the people I know who had the most visceral, this is dangerous reaction weren't like political commentators
No.
or necessarily even super political people,
Mm.
but they just got it. And so I was kind of just interested in that. That seemed like something worth exploring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people, especially that are public figures and speak on these matters for a living, are can be overly cautious and they're afraid of causing fear or being alarmist. And I think that's like something that a lot of these political commentators fear the most, is being alarmist. And even when the evidence is quite clear, I think they'll always err on the side of not being alarmist. And I think that's something that's really ingrained in those types, in my
They
opinion.
don't want to seem overly emotional,
Mm,
I
mm.
think.
Yeah, they don't want to, because I think it's very easy for them to like slip into be considered sort of hysterical and then conspiratorial. And I think once you slip into that as a professional, like writer, speaker, it's kind of hard to come out of it. So I think that's a big fear for a lot of public figures
Mm.
to slip into that, and that's why they just downplay the very obvious, and I think that's what's happened here. Anyway, let's next question. So let's see. How did you find the Cassandras?
A few different places. Some I just knew. I knew you,
Mm-hmm.
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Some were sort of like acquaintances. So, like Yolanda was somebody I knew from doing the podcast. And I've got various sort of networks in American politics and commentary. But for the most part, I put out a call on social media that went viral where I just sort of created like a definition. Like I gave people a profile and then allowed people to opt into it. And it was essentially like you saw Trump as like a threat to our whole system and society from the beginning. And you felt frustrated or upset that your fears weren't listened to. That was like the two components. And I kind of had a hunch in advance that people were going to put their hand up and say, yeah, that's me and I want to talk to you. Because I think in a lot of journalism, a lot of like investigative writing is about getting to people to talk to you who don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's really impossible to understate the extent to which that just wasn't the case.
Yeah, you got a lot of emails, didn't you?
Yeah. That just wasn't the case here. And from there, I applied a bit of a filter, and I was like, tell me a bit about yourself. Tell me how you. I asked a few questions, like, tell me how you felt when Trump first ran,
Mm.
and I kind of selected from those emails like the most Cassandra-ish Cassandras.
Mm. How do you define the most Cassandras? What does that mean exactly?
So I think I wanted people who viewed Trump as an existential risk, not just as like a bad politician or a
Mm-hmm.
bad person. So not just, oh, I didn't like him or he wasn't a good guy or I didn't like his policies. I wanted people who used the word fascist and had used it early.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that or something like they thought he was someone who was going to transition America into authoritarianism,
Mm-hmm.
that he was something that represented like a system level risk.
Right, but how do you measure that?
It's not like there's a number on a scale.
Mm.
I selected for people, like I said, there was no specific verbiage I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But people who and also time was another one. I wanted
Mm.
people who'd felt this way since at least he first announced.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like through their language, be it saying he was going to be a fascist or saying they were worried about authoritarianism or these sorts of things,
Got it.
viewed him as like a system level threat.
Mm-hmm.
But I should say, I was very much allowing people to kind of opt in
Mm-hmm.
to my definition. I was trying to include, not exclude,
Right.
people. Although with that said, I could probably have done twice as many
Mm-hmm.
interviews. There was like a lot of interest in this, which was kind of both amazing but also a little bit daunting for me as a writer, because on the one hand, everyone wanted to talk, and more than that, I think everyone, like, despite this being kind of like a long, complex piece, everyone immediately got what I was trying to do. And as soon as I said, oh yeah, I'm thinking of like using this idea of Cassandra, everyone got it immediately. And were like, and people said to me stuff like, oh, it's about time someone wrote that article.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, it was great to have that enthusiastic buy-in. On the other, I felt, I think more than anything I've written, I felt a lot of pressure to get this right. Like, I felt like I'm carrying a lot of people's stories that have not been listened to. And I felt, yeah, like a real sense of responsibility with this one.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, given the reactions to it, I think that was the right approach to take, right? So we'll get into that reaction a little later. Before I ask you about that, do you consider yourself a Cassandra? I mean, I'm obviously one, and
You're a type 1.
yeah. But I remember I'm asking you because I think you're very much one as well, and I remember very clearly that time that we were like, go back in time to 2015 when we were in Brooklyn in that, like, I forgot the name of the place, some beer hall, type of German beer hall, like, and it was like 80 or something, 80, possibly maybe even 100 people there, and it was like a young dem sort of event or something, and we were watching the first, or I think it was like the second or third, like, debate.
Oh, I remember this. It was the second Republican primary debate.
Yeah, and we went, and everyone thought it was a joke. Everybody was just laughing. Everyone was kikiing, and I remember so clearly how you were the only person in the room not laughing. Like you could that if you took a picture of that room, it would say 1,000 words, right? Like you know that picture of that guy of the Nazis where that one guy is not saluting and a sea of everyone saluting. It was
Yeah.
kind of like it was kind of gave off that energy in the sense that like there's a sea of people like laughing faces and there's just you very like kind of annoyed looking, and you were just like, and I would ask you, I was like, are you good? And you're like, I don't understand why people think this is funny. This shit isn't funny. And you were like, do they not understand how dangerous this is? They really think that he can't win and they're like wrong. Like, and then it was like you were like annoyed.
Yeah, I was so Buzz Killington.
Yeah, you were really annoyed. You were just like, what the hell's wrong with these people? Like they're not taking it seriously. Everyone thought it was a big joke. And I remember that
And these were Dems. These weren't
like progressive dad,
yeah,
like
they
young
weren't
dad.
pro-Trump or anything, but they're like, oh, isn't this funny? You
Yeah.
know, duh, duh, duh.
And you were just like, no, the fuck, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not. Like, stop laughing. Shut up. Take it seriously. So, like, that's what I remember. And I think that that strikes me as a clear light bulb memory of your, I guess, Cassandrism, so to
Cassandra,
speak.
and we're making up all sorts of
We're making up
variants of
words.
this word.
So, like, do you agree with that take? Do you feel like you're a Cassandra too?
I mean, firstly, I know I remember that. That's one that's quite clearly in my head as well,
Hmm.
because people, the response was overwhelmingly positive
Hmm.
to this. But there were a few comments that were like, "Oh, well, you're making a big deal of this. Everyone knew."
Hmm.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Like, no, they didn't. Like, for one thing, 60 however many million people voted for the guy. Um, but for another, yeah, even on our side, like, I
Hmm.
think when he won, that sobered people up pretty
Hmm.
fast. But, like, we were in progressive spaces at the
Leftist
time,
faces.
and the norm was kind of like it was funny.
It was funny. Most people were like, I fought a lot of people because they didn't want to vote for Hillary and they didn't understand the threat. So like, and I'm just like,
Yeah, I
and I
mean, we've
just be
both got our
like,
teeth on that
and I
one.
was just like, listen, like, I don't really like her that much either. I don't think she's great. Like, she's not my first choice. Like, but this is an existential threat. Like, this is a real problem. And I was like, he's gonna pack the Supreme Court. He's gonna get rid of Roe. And people were just like, he's a clown. He's not gonna win. That's not gonna happen. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, and I was fighting everybody from like the far like near communist left to like the centrist liberal side. Like everybody in between were just like, "Nah, it's fine." I'm like, it's not fine. And like I see like liberals and leftists like to throw mud at each other. It was like, nah, both of y'all didn't take neither of y'all take it seriously because I remember because I was there and I spoke to both of y'all and neither of y'all were taking that shit seriously. So like miss me with that one. Like everybody's to blame here, you know. But yeah, it's frustrating and I think a lot of people and we took a lot I remember we took a lot of social hits during that time because we were just like be like, do you not understand like what's gonna happen? But
I mean, this is the other thing about being a Cassandra, right? Is it's not popular. Even
mm,
if people don't outright dismiss you, there's kind of a bit like people don't want to hear it, you know?
yeah, and it was just our social life took a bit of a hit, I remember. And then when he did win, like nobody admitted they were wrong, which really pissed me off. But anyway, so are you a Cassandra then?
So on the sort of, did I worry about this being an existential threat early? Yeah,
Mm,
right. And certainly feel some degree of frustration in that other people weren't taking it seriously. I think, am I a Cassandra in terms of the personality profile I sort of sketched out in the piece? You know, I don't know. That's a complementary profile, so like I think I have to leave that to other people to
mm,
judge if it fits me or not. Like so I say, Cassandras sort of have a quiet courage to them. Does that apply to me? I don't know. I'd like it to, but like I think that other people would have to judge that.
mm-hmm,
Um, and for when I was writing this, if we're trying to do a bit of a behind the scenes here, I very much made a decision early on to take myself out of it because I will sometimes with some pieces I'll share a story from my life or I'll I'll put myself into the story in some way. With this one, I sort of thought I've got so many people participating and sharing their stories. I think the spotlight's just on them.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna be like, oh, and I related to that one. I did quite often relate to what they were telling me, but that wasn't how I framed it.
Hmm. Oh, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I think you have a podcast and you get to share your opinions all the time, and you just wanted to like give that opportunity to other people. I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think this one was about studying the perspective of other people. It's a perspective I'm certainly very sympathetic to.
Mm,
But I didn't go into it thinking these people are going to be exactly like me. I
mm.
sort of tried to go into it with more of an open mind of, I've got this definition of a voter. Now I sort of want to see the colour. I want to see what lies behind it a bit.
Right, right. So one thing I found really interesting is you use the gender, the gender disparity and the way that the conservative and liberal ideologies are discussed in a lot of your writing actually, and it's like something that you go on about in quite a few of your articles, and I always find it really interesting how it's always men who are like, oh wow, that's fascinating. Like are just like so like find it to be like such a novel concept. And also I think it relates to quite closely to the fact that most of the Cassandras were women.
Mm.
Um, so to us, like it's pretty common sense, like because So what's your take on that? Like, why do you think that is?
Why is there a gender divide here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a little bit of the pushback I got. A few people were like, oh, well, I'm a white guy and I saw it coming from the beginning. And yeah, cool. And I'm not like excluding anyone here, but I think we do have enough data to sort of say that the type of voter I'm profiling here, more often than not, is a woman. Not to say all women are Cassandras, most aren't.
Mm-hmm.
But probably I'd say I think about 3/4 of my interviews were women.
Yeah.
And like when I think about it in just like anecdotally, the people I know who've been most alarmed by it
Mm-hmm.
tend to be women. Um, and that's again not to say there's not male Cassandras, there are. And then on the other side, um, the what I call anti-alarmists, who are people who not just sort of were like, oh, it probably won't be that bad, but were actively angry at the Cassandras.
Mm-hmm.
The people who were like, I think you used the word hysterical before,
Mm-hmm.
who were like, you're being hysterical, you're being ridiculous, you're being overly emotional. Those people, almost all are men. And especially the people who it really seems to get under their skin
Mm-hmm.
are men, usually men. I think what's going on with them, at its simplest, is gender insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to feel feminized or emasculated. I think they're people who, I'm going to be a little bit unpleasant and personal. I think they are people who are not traditionally uber machismo and masculine and feel insecure about that.
I think that's accurate. Yeah, I think that's right.
Um, and then there's also then this sort of that initial gender insecurity is compounded by this like abstract gender insecurity because as you said an idea I use which I think is pretty common sense at this point is that liberalism is perceived as female
Right. Yeah.
in the United States and across the world really I think but the United States in particular um and if you live in a big blue city you're an academic or like a writer or something or you're a metropolitan elite. This is all coded as female
Mm-hmm.
in our discourse, whereas like quote unquote real Americans who drive a truck and live in the heartland and eat red meat and
Work in the coal mines.
yeah, even though more people work in Macy's than work in coal mines in
Mhm.
America, that's still a but
Cosplay working in the coal
right,
mines.
right. But like how many guys but yeah it's I mean, so gender is something we put on to people, isn't it? Like this was a phrasing one of my interviews used that I quoted that I liked. They said, once you have the label of woman or female put
Mm,
on to you, because that's what it is, right? I mean, there's a biological component to gender, but it's as much as anything, it's like once you see someone as a woman or a man, you start putting stereotypes and assumptions onto them
Mm.
that you're then like, oh, well, they're probably emotional,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And the interesting thing is, we do that not just about people, but abstract entities like
Mm-hmm.
liberalism or the Democratic Party
Mm-hmm.
or ideas.
And it's why I think women are used to being called hysterical for literally everything.
Yes.
So it rolls off our backs way easier. We're just like, whatever, fuck you.
Well,
Like,
that's interesting. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so it's just like we're used to it. Like we get hysterical for fucking anything,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like we're used to that and it rolls off our backs. Whereas men, like, the worst fear of a
Mm,
man is to be associated with a woman or anything womanly. And being hysterical
yeah.
is akin to being an alarmist, and they can't risk that, or they'll wake up gay, you know.
Right.
So,
It's what you said at the beginning. They didn't want to be seen as hysterical, emotional. They
Mhm.
didn't want to be female.
Right, exactly. I think yeah, that's.
Um, and then I think for some, for the sort of most anti-alarmist, having the as I think it was Lars put it, the label of woman put onto you
Mhm.
is something they find really intolerable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like the type of guy who would be quite who doesn't have a problem with gay people per se, but would be quite upset if someone thought they were gay.
Mhm. Mhm. Would be really offended if like a man hit on them, even though
Yeah, yeah,
no one's
yeah, yeah,
hitting on
yeah.
their ass, you know.
Um, and but because they're part of the media, the Democratic Party, they live in a big blue city. They went to a fancy Harvard or Yale or whatever. All of these things carry feminine connotations,
Mhm.
and so they want to. I think here's what's happening: is they want to reassert their masculinity, and part of the way they do that is by attacking Cassandras.
Mhm.
Like, listen, I'm not pro-Trump or anything, but I'm not one of these cringe, annoying, hysterical liberals
Mhm.
to try and put a bit of distance between themselves and
Mhm.
that feminization
Mhm.
is, I think, what's happening with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. So the elephant question. So the fascism, you compared fascism to an elephant. Which I thought was very. I love the use. I love the illustration there. I think it was great. And I think it was a really clear way of explaining that. Uh,
I always feel like the more animal metaphors I say, the better,
I
you
think you
know?
can never go wrong with a good animal metaphor. Do you want to know? You want to tell us a bit more about like what was the thinking behind making that comparison?
Yeah. So I wanted like an intuitive way to bring together a number of things of like the difference between understanding something abstractly and really feeling it in your bones. So, like, one of the things I maybe shifted my views on a bit through the process of writing this is I really thought identity, particularly race and gender, were going to be absolutely central to this story. And they kind of are. But a lot of the Cassandras, if you ask them, why are you a Cassandra? They won't say because I'm a woman, or because I'm black, or because I'm trans. There's almost none of them said that.
Mhm.
They'll say because look, Trump is obviously a fascist. He's not hiding it, right?
Mhm.
Um, So I don't think it's as one for one as that. I think what is the case is it's definitely like, have you seen it in person? I think makes a difference. Now, obviously, being black, being a woman, being trans makes it much more likely that you've seen explicit bigotry yourself.
Mhm.
Another thing I really discovered is red states. Like, Cassandras are like red state progressives.
Mhm.
Or they're people who like grew up in a very red area and then moved.
Mhm.
There's some exceptions, it's not universal, but that's really, really common. And I think that was the better way of framing it for me. It's about, I think a lot of the anti-alarmists, a lot of the people who feel like we're exaggerating,
Mhm.
don't get how radicalized, how conspiratorial, and how really quite openly sadistic the Republican base has become.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of have to see it with your own eyes, otherwise it'll just feel because like it's so extreme that I
Mhm.
think if you're just being told about it, it will feel like an
You're making it
exaggeration.
up.
But the reason I chose the elephant metaphor, I didn't come up with it, but I stole it from a very different context.
Hmm.
Is it's originally a military metaphor.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a way of explaining what every general in history has noticed, which is there is a massive difference between troops who have seen combat and those who haven't.
Right.
Um, Even if, they have the same equipment, the same training, on paper they're exactly the same. Any general in history, from the ancient world through to the modern world, will tell you they would rather have one guy who's been in combat before than five who haven't. Right? And so I picked that, and the way it's sometimes explained in military theory is this idea of seeing the elephant.
Hmm.
And so I picked that because it was a way that kind of they didn't make the Cassandras out as victims. I wanted to stay away from that narrative of like, oh, these poor people and how they've suffered. I wanted to write it such that they're the heroes, or I mean heroines, I
Hmm.
guess, of the story. Um, and so I used this military metaphor to be like, I didn't quite say it, but these are our best soldiers, in a way. These are the people whose opinions we should trust because they've understood the thing. These are the people who are going to have the best instincts on how we win this fight because they understand what the enemy is. In much the same way as if you have to fight an enemy army, you would much rather your own troops are combat experienced than not. And I thought that was a more positive way of framing the Cassandra experience than just, oh, they had to suffer through all of these people being unpleasant to them, which is certainly true
Hmm.
in some cases, but I wanted it to be more I don't know what the word I'm going for here is, but more that they're the lead character of the story and they deserve focusing on as the lead character.
What, going off of that, do you find it strange that everybody just pretends like like so many people got it wrong, right? Like the anti-Cassandras are like, right? They're just the reactionary centrist, as you called them. There's so many people who got it wrong. Like a lot, like most people I know got it wrong,
Mm,
right? Most people got it wrong in our real life. And also just like in the media space and public figures, right? And do you find it strange how like no everybody pretends like pretend like just pretends like they like they just sweep under the rug how wrong they were, and it's
mm,
just like weird how like I think the only person I've ever heard, and I could be incorrect here, the only person I've seen like admit that they were like that Cassandra's were right was Rachel Maddow
mm,
on MSNBC, and it was really, and she was like, she said she had a segment where she was like, you know, those people that we've been saying were alarmist and we're calling hysterical, they were right. They've been right this entire time. And and like she's the only person that I've ever seen like actually address that. Everybody else kind of just pretends like they either that they're shocked
mm.
and they're still shocked by it, or that they've known all along and they've pretended to know all along. And I think that's really weird, and a little bizarre. Like, what's your take on that?
There's a few who've done what I call semi-apologized. So John Stewart was big on the you can't call it fascism, and he really like laid into people who
Yeah,
did.
and it was yeah.
He did say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't think things would get this bad." But then the next sentence he said was a joke about blue sky liberals.
Mm,
There's a left anti-alarmist
mm-hmm,
called Corey Robin, who I don't mean to always pick on this guy. He's just like a good go-to example because he was very virulently against calling it fascism and
mm-hmm,
really quite critical and unpleasant of people on our side for pretty much the whole Trump era.
mm-hmm,
And he's written a lot on it and he's quite high profile. So he's just my go-to case for like a left anti-alarmist.
mm-hmm,
Um he did he got pushed in an interview of like, are you still really saying that like it's not that that all of this stuff? And he's like, oh well, and he gave a very evasive answer about it,
mm-hmm.
where he sort of admitted he was wrong, but not quite.
Okay, it's
Um,
better than most, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not overwhelmed by it, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And I think what's happened I think what those cases clearly show is even if people shuffle their feet and they know they kind of made a wrong call, they're not willing to revise the frameworks that made them wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even for the ones who maybe Maddown is interesting, that of all the ones we've talked about, that's the only woman, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, but I think of David Brooks was another one I've written about who did do a piece saying I got it wrong, it was that bad, and then immediately was straight back onto his anti-woke stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not like people. Some people occasionally will say, "Okay, yeah, this was worse than I thought it would be," and some people won't even say that.
No, I think most don't.
I think what's happening is they're not willing to revise the gendered framework through which they look at the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've pointed out this male insecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would need to happen for them to properly admit that they got it wrong is to kind of understand why they got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that would involve them saying, oh, you know, I kind of have this massive gender hang up and I need to let it go. Now, they absolutely should do that, but have you ever known a guy to just shake it off like that?
No.
Yeah, we don't, right?
Mm.
So, like, and it's killing us. It's literally killing the country that they can't shake this off.
Mm.
And I think ultimately we just have to rotate people like that out of leadership positions. It's not even about punishing them or being like mean to them. It's just like they clearly haven't learned from their mistakes, and I think more importantly, they're clearly not going to.
Mm-hmm.
And so honestly, I just want Cassandras in positions of power. I want them running the Democratic Party and I want them running media institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're getting there with Democrats. The media's a bit of a different story.
Mm-hmm.
But I want people who, on a gut level, have got it. I want people who I think a lot of Democrats have sort of been bullied by their primary electorate into take.
Good.
No, good, and I appreciate that. But I'd rather people we didn't have to bully, people who
Mm.
were just there. You know?
Agreed. Agreed. And then there's still a lot of bullying to be done, in my opinion.
Yes.
So speaking of bullying that needs to be done, Ezra Klein.
Excellent segue.
um, you mentioned him as like kind of the center figure of like the reactionary centrist crowd. Why do you like we talked a little bit more about what we went into detail about why they're like this, and I think we you kind of explained that. But it's yeah, it's just I think he's a core example of this, of like people who are just like rather dig their heels in, and rather than like ever try to like get things right or have any sort of integrity about where they're coming from. And I think it's funny how like it resonated. I did notice a lot of people really resonating with that part in particular. I think
Mm.
people are really frustrating with him, and I think with very good reason. I find him to be very much like kind of
I think people find it, I'm talking about the Cassandras
mm,
here, very, very frustrating to have someone talk to you in a tone as if you're a child,
mm-hmm,
as if they've understood everything. They already know everything you have to say,
mm-hmm,
but you just need to appreciate the wider context
mm-hmm.
that they're bringing you. And I think
It's very patronizing, right?
very male as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
Talking about gender. I think there's something in Ezra's tone that does that to people.
mm-hmm,
And I think people were just really. I mean, Ezra's an interesting case because I don't hate everything Ezra's done or written. I've listened to a lot of his podcast. He's not stupid.
mm-hmm,
That's not his problem. Um, and some of his stuff is actively quite good. Um, but I think he's not listening.
mm-hmm.
I think um, I watched recently after his Kirk. So just sorry for the audience, Ezra Klein. The thing that really annoyed everyone is he had an article called "Charlie Kirk Practiced
Right.
Politics Right."
Disgusting.
Yeah, Which obviously people were like, look, we're not saying it's good that he died. We are saying we don't have to praise him just because he died, because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't practice politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I listened recently. He had a conversation with, I think it was Ta-Nehisi Coates,
Mm-hmm.
who had written an article criticizing him, and like, it
That
was.
was painful. That was a painful watch.
I think because Ezra just wasn't listening to what
No,
was being said to him.
not a single word.
It was kind of doing that thing where you wait for someone to finish talking and then you transition into your points.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think people just find that frustrating.
It's such a like to treat like a
And
contemporary
let's be clear,
like
and treat the people who have been correct.
right, treat somebody who's been far more correct than you have,
Yeah.
and someone who is like quite a formidable contemporary, thought sort of leader in a lot of ways, and is very well respected in that regard. To treat them like so patronizingly, it was just like it really riled a lot of people up, and me included. Um, and he, when for describing the kind of person we were talking about that are on the other end, like to me, Ezra Klein comes up as like the first kind of one of the first names that comes to mind.
The reason I put him in the article wasn't that I have some personal grudge against him. It's that a lot of the interviewees brought him up
Mm-hmm.
without me prompting.
Right.
They were like, this is an example of, to use Ezra's words, not doing politics right.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Ezra particularly, I think he's got such, I don't know if this is genuine or not, but such an interest in like understanding what makes the right tick. And let's have Ross Douthard on the podcast. We disagree about a lot, me and Ross, but he's such a serious thinker. No, he's not.
No, he's not.
And oh, let's get this tech bro on and hear about like, let's get Nate Silver on, or like um let's interview some libertarian wingnut who's increasingly drifting towards open fascism, like really interested in engaging with their ideas and sharing them with the audience, and kind of just isn't at all about Cassandras. There's never, and this, I'm never. Let's have one of us on and really like I don't agree with everything this Cassandra's saying, but I think it's really important we hear this point of view. You never,
No.
ever have that. I mentioned Ezra only. I think he's quite typical in it.
That being said, like what, like there was a lot of really positive. It was really positive. Like people were overwhelmingly positive about this piece. Like, what was your reaction to that? Did you expect it to be that positive?
Um, I said earlier I felt a real sense of responsibility to get this right. My feeling was if I could do something that not just created the argument that I want to create, but spoke to and validated the experience, that it would be positive. I think there are a lot of people out there who sort of meet this profile of a Cassandra and feel, I think correctly, just profoundly unlistened to. Um, so yeah, I mean, the response was very, very, very positive. I think honestly, as much as anything, probably the number one comment was, I feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think as much as anything, my response to that was actually just relief
Mm-hmm.
that like I hadn't put something out there that um either missed the point or cheapened the experience, that the people who'd had that experience felt like it represented them. And so I think relieved, honestly, is how I felt this past few days.
Mm-hmm. And did you get in? Was there any pushback whatsoever?
There was some. Um, there's a, I mean, there's some people were kind of just like, I haven't heard from any of the people I named, like Ezra Klein. I don't think he would
Mm-hmm.
respond to me, but some people are very, but it's underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
The critical responses I got, a lot of it was just like, "Oh, you're exaggerating."
Still.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a definite minority. But then again, my main forum's Blue Sky, and Blue Sky is kind of
Like
like
the fucking earth cracks open and fucking Satan grabs his hand from underneath, starts pulling people down to hell. You're like, you're full of shit.
yeah. I mean, I think yeah, but yeah, no. Some people just aren't gonna get it, you
It's like
know.
there's like a gaping hole ball into hell right outside your door. Like, no, no, you're exaggerating. You're being hysterical. You need
Yeah, yeah.
to.
No, there was a few of that. I mean, to be fair, a small minority, but yeah,
That's wild. That's wild. It doesn't surprise me though.
yeah. I
Um,
wasn't overly troubled by that.
no, because like it's just willful or like, ignorance at this point, right? Um, so I guess the last question: what did you learn from writing the piece? What was your
Oh,
biggest takeaway?
a lot. I mean, I talked to almost 40 people who, like, all came to the interview with, like, here's what I want to say, you know? Um, and there's often quite specific stuff, like, with a lot of people, I got into, like, some, because there's a lot of different, like, components to what's happened with Trumpism and what led to it. And so people were sharing, and I just learned a lot about people's lives and, like, where they were coming from. So I learned a huge amount. My biggest takeaway, I think I was very much leaning towards this anyway. But one of the things that sort of clicked for me is the reason the anti-alarmists weren't getting it. Um, this sort of, like I said, this gendered insecurity actually kind of shows up in their writing as well. Their writing, they always want it to be clever and savvy and cynical and sort of like, let me show you what's really going on,
Mm.
you know? And there's a quote from Alex, I think her name was, which I really loved. Is she was like, when things really started to go wrong is when we started considering earnestness cringe.
Mm.
And I was just
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I really like that quote as well.
I loved that. Um, and like, it really made me think, and it really influenced how I wrote the piece in a lot of ways. I think I was sort of going this way as a writer anyway. But it really was like, yeah, that's so right. And like, oftentimes, I think what people are doing when they write, and particularly I think write politics, is they're trying to get the audience to see how smart they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with like a lot of things though, not necessarily
It's the thing,
politics.
it's the way with a lot of things,
Yeah,
and but that's wrong, right? That's not what you should be doing.
for
And
sure.
I mean, it's especially
Also
grating when the
stems
person.
from a level of insecurity as well, doesn't
I
it?
think so. I need to use my quips and my eye rolling irony to like everyone's going to go, oh, what a savant this guy is, right? Um, Whereas like what you're trying to do. Well, we're just recording this in our living room. There's a siren in the background. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make an argument. You're trying to capture an experience, and like I think there can be a thing where even it's fine.
Mm.
Um, Even for people like us who sort of don't really, who don't buy this gender insecurity thing, it can still get in the back of your head, and you'll write something and you'll delete it and you'll be like, "Nah, that was too sappy." And I realised stop asking that question. Stop asking, "Is it sappy?" Ask, "Is it sincere?"
Mm-hmm.
You can be emotional. You can make a case that's like this was a very like heart on sleeve
Mm-hmm.
type piece, and like I think the question to ask is, do you mean that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that with your full chest? Is that what you really think?
Mm-hmm.
In which case, say it. Don't worry about being sappy, emotional, cringe. Female,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't worry about having that label put on you.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you think. Stop trying to like pretend to be smart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that really stuck with me. Like it's okay to be earnest,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay to sort of say this is what I think and this is what I feel without dressing it up. And I think that's where the Cassandras are. I think that's a lot of what I took from them. And it's the right way to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that was really enlightening. Thank you, Toby Buckle. It was really great having you.
Did you
Uh,
enjoy being a podcast host? No.
it was was fine. You're clearly the podcaster in this household. It's fine. We could keep it that way. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Yep. Thanks everyone for listening.